Today's guest, Patricia Traina. We are talking New York Giants, previewing training camp preseason and the 2023 season. And, of course, the biggest story out of New York right now, what is going on with Saquon Barkley? Will we see him in 2023 for the Giants? Coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock and no Matt Williamson today. I've got a very special guest, Matt on vacation. So I'm going to bring on some of our esteemed hosts here on the network with me this week and preview the 2023 season. And it starts on Monday's program with Patricia Traina, one of my favorites to talk to, at Patricia_Traina on Twitter and all of the socials. You can find me at BD Peacock. I do want to appreciate everybody once again for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we're here. We made it through the offseason, Patricia. Training camp starting up this week. How excited are you to get back to the grind and start watching some real practice? Not real games quite yet, but real practice at least this week.
Yeah, normally I don't want to rush through the 6-week break we get because it comes up. It seems like it takes forever to come up, but this year I made an exception. The New York Giants, big things on the horizon for them, a lot of optimism around the team, a lot of excitement, and that has spilled over, I know, to me and a lot of other people who cover the team. And I just can't wait to see what this team has in store of year 2 of the Brian Daboll era.
Yeah, year 1, fantastic for Brian Daboll. It was really an exciting time, I'm sure, for New York Giants fans. And I want to get more into what those expectations should be and talk a little bit about Daniel Jones as well and what that Giants defense is going to look like here in 2023. But we got to start with Saquon Barkley. And as of now, Saquon threatening a holdout. And I thought it was really interesting, the wording of what we've heard from Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley, the two biggest names that are looking for new contracts here and not wanting to sign the franchise tender. And it was more like, it was almost as if Patricia, and correct me if I'm wrong, that training camp wasn't even a question. It was like, of course we're not going to training camp. We're already talking about, am I going to be there for week 1? So do you expect to see any Saquon Barkley? We do have, a few hours here before the veterans do report to camp. Could they get a deal done? Do you expect to see Saquon at any point before the season starts?
Before the season starts, probably not. I don't think Saquon is going to show up at all for training camp. What I do think is going to happen is he's going to come in potentially that first week, just, leading up to the regular season opener, sign that tag and be available for the full season. I don't think Saquon is going to leave $10.1 million guaranteed money on the table. That would just be foolish, in my opinion. And I think he understands that as well. Now, Saquon appeared on a podcast a few weeks ago, actually before the signing deadline, the July 17th deadline. And he said, look, at the end of the day, and I'm paraphrasing here what he said, but at the end of the day, winning a championship trumps all things else. So I do believe Saquon is going to show up and he's going to play. I don't think he's going to say, you know what, Giants, I'm sitting it out. I think he's going to be there. He likes being with his teammates. He's a leader. He gets a rush from the game. I think he will be there. And, what kind of deal he's going to get from the Giants as far as, will they up the franchise tag offer? That I don't know. Will they promise not to tag him again? Probably, I don't see that happening, because they've got to see what they have in training camp first. But Saquon will be there, I think, for week 1.
Yeah, that's an interesting option there because I think it was Jordan Love of the Packers. They wanted to figure out a way to secure the 5th-year option time frame, but not do the 5th-year option dance. And so they did a short extension to pay him through that time to make up for it. Do you think the Giants might do a deal where it's not a long-term deal, but it's a 1-year contract instead of the franchise tag, where they give him a little bit more money on that 1 year, and then maybe, Saquon works it out to where he can get that non-tag for the next offseason and make sure that he is a free agent just to get him in? Could that be where they're able to come to an agreement just so he can feel good about this season and get him into whether it's camp, preseason, or probably, week 1?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something you got to think about if you're the Giants. But on the other hand, the Giants have indicated in the past that they'd be perfectly fine with him playing on the $10.1 million franchise tag. Now, here's the problem with the Giants. Right now, they only have about $3.8 million in cap space. That's got to get him through the summer. That's got to get him through, as much of the regular season as possible. So do they have the luxury of, upping that franchise tag amount to say 11 million? Yeah, that, you're only talking another $900,000. Do they have the luxury of upping it further? Probably not. So I would say chances are they're not going to go if they up the offer, I don't think it's going to be by more than 11 million, which, by the way, was the reported amount per year of their last contract offer that Saquon rejected just before that July 17th deadline.
Okay, 11 mil. That was going to be my next question. 11 mil per year was the offer. Do the Giants legitimately want to sign Saquon Barkley to a long-term deal, or do you feel like the Giants are like, well, we just kind of want to have you for that 1 year, maybe tag you again, and then we'll let you go?
No, I think they wanted to sign him for the long term. I mean, they spoke all off season long about how valuable he was, how much they wanted him. The two sides wanted each other. It wasn't just like, one side was like, yeah, I don't want you, but at the end of the day, Saquon wanted to be paid, which, who could blame him? We all want to be paid what we think we're worth. The problem is that the Giants viewed Saquon in one light as far as his value. Saquon viewed himself in a different light as far as his value. And that's where the disconnect came between the two sides. So, you had this standoff where the Giants view Saquon as more of a downhill runner. Saquon views himself as more of a dual all-purpose type of back who can catch, run routes like a receiver and carry the ball. And that's where the disconnect is. And then you couple that with the fact that the running back market has tanked significantly, and not just for Saquon, but we see it across the league with Josh Jacobs. We see it with, Dalvin Cook can't get a job. Ezekiel Elliott can't seem to get a job. And, that's where we're at with him, unfortunately.
It's unbelievable where the running back market has gone, and it's just been completely flat over the last 10 years with the top of the running back market when every other position is just skyrocketing as far as what guys are getting paid. And the running backs went from being among the top position groups to get paid to among the bottom, aside from kickers and punters and special teamers. So
yeah, definitely.
And so my question with Saquon is, it feels like the Giants were a little surprised by the impasse here and not being able to get a deal done, because they didn't really do much at running back either during the offseason. So if Saquon doesn't show up, what do you think that running game looks like in week 1? Who's the next guy up? Is it Matt Breida? Is it did they sign James Robinson?
Yeah, they signed James Robinson. They also drafted a kid, Eric Gray, who, at least in college, was able to do all the things, catch the ball, line up all over the place, run the ball, obviously. I always got the impression that the Giants were going to start to gravitate to more of a committee approach at the running game. I think the days of having a bell cow might be going away in the NFL as far as the running game goes. And, I can understand that, because from the Giants' perspective, they want to keep Saquon fresh. They don't want to pound him into the ground before he turns, 27, 28 years old and say, okay, guess what, Saquon, now you're done. So I understand what the Giants might be looking to do. I don't know how much of that factored into the offer that they made to him. But as far as what the Giants are going to do, I think you're going to see Matt Breida be RB number 1. Robinson, I think, is going to compete for RB number 2, but also you got to keep an eye on Eric Gray. And I think the Giants are going to just kind of take a look and see what they have at that position. They also have Gary Brightwell. They have Jashawn Corbin, a guy that they had on their practice squad all of last year. So I think they want to wait and see what they have, and that's going to either strengthen their resolve against, overpaying Saquon, or they're going to say, oh my God, we better come to some kind of agreement fast because this ain't going to work.
Okay. Saquon Barkley or the Breida Gray Robinson committee in New York. Okay, that'll be an interesting one, and obviously something everyone's going to keep an eye on, especially those fantasy drafters as it gets close to all the fantasy drafts coming up here in August. Okay, more with Patricia Traina talking expectations in year 2 for Brian Daboll's New York Giants next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain when making that hire that you have the access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. And why not go to LinkedIn that already has the largest selection of potential hirees out there? You might even find some folks that didn't realize they needed a new job and that your job was perfect for them. All you do is you add your job to the purple hashtag hiring frame to your jobs, to your business's LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. And then simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and eventually hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Patricia Traina, the host of Locked On Giants, joining me here today. Always a pleasure chatting with you, Patricia. And it was such a fun season, I'm sure. When a new regime comes to town and you start winning, there's got to be a ton of excitement for New York Giants fans. So when you look at this team and year 2 of Brian Daboll, year 2 of Daniel Jones, he gets the new contract. Saquon doesn't get the new contract, which, by the way, just me from the outside looking in, correct me if I'm wrong, Patricia, because I watched this team last year. I thought, Daniel Jones, had a nice little season and, showed what he could do with his legs. And I thought it was a great job that Brian Daboll did with this football team on offense. But Saquon Barkley was really the catalyst to the team. And it's hard in this day and age to build your team around a running back, especially if you don't want to pay your running backs and you want to filter new guys in. So might we see whether it's because there's no Saquon there that you can utilize in your offense, or just because, it's year 2 now and they've paid Daniel Jones and showed the confidence in him? Do you think this is going to be an offense that's driven more through the passing game than the running game versus last year?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, all you have to do is look at the additions in the offseason the Giants made. They added Darren Waller by a trade from the Raiders. He's going to be your de facto #1 receiver because the Giants really don't have a true number one wide receiver. They added Paris Campbell, who brings speed to the table. They drafted Jalen Hyatt, who brings speed to the table. Pretty clear to me that the Giants want to open up that passing game a little bit more. Now, when you have Saquon and Barkley on the field, you have to obviously account for him. You obviously have to account for Daniel Jones's legs. But now the Giants have other guys that potentially defensive coordinators need to account for. And I think that was the plan all along because, look, when you just have one guy, and last year you can make the case that the Giants just had Barkley that teams had to account for as far as the skill position players. Once you figure out how to shut them down, that's it. You're like, okay, now what do we do? So the Giants added some guys so that they don't get into that situation. They can better play matchup football, which they really weren't able to do as well last year. Now they think if everybody's healthy, now they think they have everybody they need to play matchup football.
And I really like the backup tight end, Daniel Bellinger, as well as a rookie last year, the 4th rounder. So you got the two-headed monster there at tight end with Darren Waller, and hopefully he stays healthy, and then sort of a pick your poison group. We talked about a committee backfield. We have a committee wide receiver group developing there in New York as well. And, speedster and the rookie and Jalen Hyatt and Isaiah Hodgins really showed what he could do last year. And unfortunately, there was the injuries to Wan'Dale Robinson and Paris Campbell can be those chess pieces, the guys you move around, play in the slot. So Very interesting offense coming together there for the New York Giants as far as the pass catchers and the passing game. And of course, Daniel Jones' development with Brian Daboll is really the key probably for what expectations should be there for the Giants. And then they're building something on defense, which you have to like. They throw a first-round cornerback in Deonte Banks, to go with, and Cordell Flott was a player I liked last year that they drafted, and Adoree Jackson, Xavier McKinney, and a group that's coming together in the backfield. But man, it's that front seven that's really going to make this thing go, with the first rounder Kayvon Thibodeau, which is probably going to be a lot of people's choice for breakout player of the year on the defensive side of the ball, not only for the New York Giants, but maybe the entire league.
Yeah, they're really expecting Kayvon Thibodeau to take that big leap in year 2. Last year he was making progress. He suffered that preseason knee injury, which kind of slowed things down a little bit. Took him a few weeks for that knee to really start to feel better. Also, in the process, he missed time that otherwise could be used to, have the game slow down. So once the game started to slow down for him, even though the numbers weren't there for him, he was still impacting the game. He was opening things up for other guys to make plays. So now the expectation there is that, okay, continue opening things up for other guys to make plays, but let's see you finish a few more plays than you did last year as a rookie.
Yeah, and we see a lot of players take that year 2 leap. So that's going to be really important for this Giants team, especially in a year 2 for the head coach as well. Did the Giants play so well, Patricia, last year that Brian Daboll made his job harder in 2023? Because now our expectations for Giants fans, like, oh, cool, we've arrived now. Now this is a playoff team. And if you're not doing damage in January, now we're going to be disappointed in you, Brian Daboll.
I think the expectations are there. I mean, but if we're being realistic, you got to, progress is never linear in the NFL. I think we can all agree on that. So, people often ask me, okay, what would be progress for you from year 1 of Daboll's tenure to year 2? I would say start by winning in the division. The Giants didn't have a good record in the division last year. And we all know that if you're going to make noise in the playoffs, you got to secure that division. And if you don't, you're probably not going to go far. Now, the Eagles are still the cream of the crop. I think, everybody will agree with that. I do think the Giants closed the gap a little bit with Dallas. Maybe they're on par. We'll have to see how that plays out a little bit. But that's where I would say the Giants need to start in year 2. Would it be great if they had double-digit wins this year? Absolutely. But, look, the NFC East in general has a tougher schedule. Not just the Giants, but the whole NFC East has a tougher schedule this year. So I say start with winning in the division, and then let's see if you can stand toe-to-toe with some, the 49ers of the world, the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins, the tougher teams that you're going to face on your schedule.
That's such a great point when it comes to playoff football, and you do well, and you have a quarterback that you like. Talking to Daniel Jones, and I've been through this. I covered the San Francisco 49ers, by the way. Subscribe to Locked On 49ers as well, to those listeners out there. And I watched the 49ers have this team, and they built this amazing roster, and then you go into the playoffs, and it's like, oh yeah, Garoppolo's good and fine, but man, when you start going toe to toe with Matthew Stafford and Patrick Mahomes, and there's Josh Allen out there, and there's Joe Burrow out there, it's a different league. So you get to January, that playoff, especially on the AFC side, you make it to the Super Bowl. You're going to be facing a ridiculously good quarterback and a really good football team. So that's where it's going to be the most difficult, I think, for the New York Giants. The regular season's one thing, get yourself into the playoffs, but man, there's multiple playoff caliber teams in that division. So that's tough enough. Then you get in the playoffs and it's like, okay, can Daniel Jones go toe to toe with, Dak, and can he go toe to toe with Jalen Hurts and the Eagles? And then if we get by everybody in the NFC, oh my gosh, now we got it's like the video game boss thing. It's like, oh, now we've got the mega boss, and we got Mahomes. We're going to take down Mahomes, with Daniel Jones. We're going to take down Joe Burrow. So that's fascinating. And really that's going to be the thing I'm going to be looking for most with this 2023 New York Giants team is Daniel Jones, and where is he at? Because if they find out, man, okay, I like Daniel Jones, but maybe he's not that guy for us, then I think that's going to change the trajectory of this football team quite a bit.
Yeah, and that's why if you look at the contract Daniel Jones got, I think the Giants are cautiously optimistic that he is indeed the guy. But, let's look at the contract, really zoom in on it. It's a 4-year deal, 160 million, but the Giants can get out of it after 2 years if they so choose. So there's really not a long-term commitment that's just crazy. So, I think, there's a lot of hope that the Giants will, and Daniel Jones will progress and grow old together, so to speak. But there's still that wait and see because look, last year, I always equate this to like learning a foreign language in a way. You start off at level 1, and then once you master it, you advance to level 2 and level 3 and so forth. Last year was 101 for Daniel Jones. He did well with what they asked him to do, but they didn't ask him to do a whole lot in terms of the deep passing game. They didn't ask him to do a whole lot, working under center. I think a lot of his throws were off of his first read. Now you got to start to move to those more advanced things that, the elite quarterbacks of the league are able to do. That's what I think we're going to be looking for in year 2 of Daniel Jones in this offense.
That's really interesting too, because the way that contract is structured, and when you see the money, it's like, oh my gosh, Daniel Jones is in that upper echelon, $40 million a year quarterback or whatever it is. And then you look at the contract structure, like, wait a second. Okay. So year 1, Daniel Jones show, and we'll see what that looks like. Year 2, you could draft a quarterback, develop him behind Daniel Jones, and get out of that contract after year 3. And now you're on to a new quarterback already pretty darn quickly. It's amazing how fast things move in the NFL in that sort of a way.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff from Patricia Traina, the host of Locked On Giants. Find her on all the socials at Patricia_Traina. And make sure you are subscribed up to Locked On Giants and the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show daily on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Patricia, it's a pleasure chatting with you. And let's do it again this season. Good luck.
Thanks.
All right, next, I got some more thoughts here about the NFC East and what that's going to look like for the New York Giants this year. And by the way, tomorrow I'll be chatting with David Harrison, the host of Washington. I guess we'll call him the Washington football team at this point because new ownership. Is it going to be the Commanders still? I don't know. So we'll find out all of those things from David Harrison of Locked On Commanders. We'll see if he has to change the name to his podcast. And we'll talk more about this division, actually. And I'm sure he believes that Washington's trying to do the same thing that the Giants are and trying to make some ground up in that division, which is going to be one of the toughest in the NFC East this year. More on that division, more on my projection for the New York Giants in 2023 next. Thanks once again, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're not a YouTuber regularly, it still helps us if you subscribe up, hit the thumbs up, and you can hit the notification bell as well so you know when a new episode is live. And you know when Matt and I go live, you can jump in on the chat with us on our regular mailbag episodes. And, of course, you can find us everywhere you get your podcasts. Patricia just brightens my day. I'm kind of jealous of those Locked On Giants everydayers out there that get to listen to Patricia Traina first thing and get to hear her talk about the New York Giants. And she does such a fantastic job at Locked On Giants and all of her writing gigs as well. They're covering the team. Nobody does it better than Patricia. And it's such a fascinating team this year in New York with those Giants because of that division. And when you look at this team and they still got Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams inside and A'Shawn Robinson. I love Azeez Ojulari as that, speed rusher on the outside opposite Kayvon Thibodeau, which could have a breakout year. You got Bobby Okereke and at linebacker, and you've got a pretty good group there in the front seven. And that could be trouble. It could be one of the better front sevens in the NFL. Unfortunately, they're in one of the most difficult divisions in the NFL this year. And I like what the Giants are doing with the rest of their defense in the secondary, especially if, it would be really nice for them if Deonte Banks hits as a number one corner as well for them. But man, when you take out Saquon Barkley, he was so important to that offense last year. And I've seen, I cover the San Francisco 49ers. I've seen a lot of Matt Breida, and he's a nice player, but he's not someone that you want to build your running game around. Eric Gray, 5th round rookie. You never know how rookies are going to go. Maybe he even just takes over the job if Saquon holds out or gets injured. And so that's the other thing with with the running back position and building around the running back. Because so if Saquon sits out, is he going to be more likely to get injured if he jumps right in and starts playing for you? And running backs already, the attrition's high. We've seen it with Saquon Barkley throughout his career. So just building around a running back is such a difficult proposition in the NFL because of the attrition rate. And now we're seeing with Saquon, and he knows that. And I'm totally on Saquon's side that he should be trying to get as much as he can now while he is so important to the New York Giants. Because if they find out that he's not actually as important and Daniel Jones takes that step, and that's what the Giants are hoping for, because that's long-term success in the NFL, is not building around one running back. It's building around, the passing game and having a running back stable that can supplement that. But I have my doubts about Daniel Jones, and we'll see what it looks like in year 2. But such a big season for the New York Giants because Saquon Barkley was such a big part of that team. And if he's not there, or if he gets injured, then I think it's going to be so much more difficult for the New York Giants to replicate what they did last year. And as Patricia noted, development is not linear in the NFL. And sometimes, teams get a little bit better, then they get a little bit worse again before they get better. And we'll see what that looks like for Brian Daboll in year 2, even though I'm all in on Brian Daboll. I mean, that was a home run hire for the New York Giants. I loved how he figured out what he had to do to get that team to win every week, and using Daniel Jones' athleticism, his underrated athleticism, as a big part of that offense, and running the football and making sure he's in front of the sticks, because he knew they weren't going to be throwing, third and longs all day and outdoing a whole bunch of football teams, and utilize the strength of your defense to keep those games close and then go win it late. So I love what I'm seeing from Brian Daboll. I like the New York Giants, but man, is 3 teams going to come out of the NFC East every year? And this isn't a wide open NFC right now. And it's the toughest division in the league because you have 2 of the 3 or 4 best teams in the league in that division right now. So you could be a really good football team, but you're still, fighting for your playoff lives in week 17 and week 18 if the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles are still ahead of you in that division. So I think Patricia nailed it when she talked about winning the games in your division. Can they beat the Cowboys? Can they beat the Philadelphia Eagles? Can they tell those teams in their division, hey, we're not just going to kick it behind you guys in the standings. We are going to beat you head to head, and we're going to beat you in the standings. And you're the team that's going to be fighting for that wild card spot while we're over here flying a division winning banner and maybe even getting home field in the playoffs. So, there's a bit of a step for them to take to go from what they were last year, which was sort of a cheeky startup, a really fun team to watch in New York, to being the team that's like, oh no, we have to go play the New York Giants. Can they become that? And I do think Saquon Barkley needs to be a part of that, at least in the short term, while that team continues to develop and get to that point. But can they take that step this year is a big question for the New York Giants. I'm still a little bit skeptical. I got to be honest. I am, because I just don't like so much depending on how good your running back is. I know the running game will probably be pretty good, even with a stable of backs, even though it's, sort of a nondescript group behind Saquon Barkley, because the offensive line is really good. And we haven't talked about the offensive line yet for the New York Giants, but when you go left to right with Andrew Thomas, who's come into his own, is one of the best tackles in the NFL. And then you have on the opposite side, Evan Neal, and you hope he takes that same step that Andrew Thomas did. A little struggle early, as rookies do. Takes offensive linemen, offensive tackles a while sometimes. And then if they've got those bookends, they've got the best center in this year's draft, the 2023 draft, second rounder, John Michael Schmitz in the inside. And then, Mark Glowinski, the veteran, is in there as well. And so that's a really solid group. And that is going to be the key for you running the football with or without Saquon Barkley. And if that group is one of the best in the league, we already talked about what their front 7 on defense looks like. If you're that good up front, you don't have to blow teams out. You don't have to score 40 points a game, right? You just have to, Daniel Jones has to be efficient. And if that offensive line's opening up space for whoever is the running back, then I think you're still going to be okay. So I think that's the path for the New York Giants, and that development of Daniel Jones, that development of Evan Neal, John Michael Schmitz, that development of the speedster and Jalen Hyatt. Does he become a legit starter for the team? Wan'Dale Robinson, after an injury-plagued rookie season, what does he look like here in year 2? And is he that quick, get open all the time, third down weapon out of the slot. And of course, Darren Waller's had his own injury problems. Can he be a number one? Is he going to be that 1,000-yard tight end and really the whoopee for Daniel Jones here? So you can really start to build the storyline for an amazing New York Giants run, an amazing New York Giants season. And you can also look at things like, oh, maybe Daniel Jones isn't it. Maybe Saquon Barkley causes a distraction. Maybe he comes back. He's not the same. Maybe he's injured. Maybe he's not even there at all. And he was too important to that offense. And now you're just a pretty mediocre team with a few decent pieces on offense. And then, a defense that's frustrated by the offense not being able to pull off their end of the bargain, really. So I don't know. I don't know what to expect about the Giants this year. Did they make too big of a leap last year? Are expectations too high? I still got to project them third in the division behind the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. So let us know what you think at BD Peacock on Twitter. You can hit up Williamson on vacation at Williamson NFL. He's probably not checking his notifications, but you know what, man? He lives and breathes football. I bet he's somewhere with a pina colada in his hand and is like, oh, I got to check out what's going on with the podcast. I got to check out what's going on in the NFL right now. Oh, look at this. Someone's talking about the Giants and the Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. And what about the Washington Commanders? We'll talk Washington Commanders on tomorrow's episode of Peacock and Williamson. We've got David Harrison, the host of Locked On Commanders, joining us. We'll see how he feels about the New York Giants as well and the rest of that division, where Washington is with new ownership in 2023. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen. Peacock and Williamson, back tomorrow right here on all of your favorite podcast platforms.